What's up, nerds? I've got Jason Call, who is running for Congress. We're going to ask him a little bit about his decision to run, what he cares about. We'll touch on some hot topics like Yang's Open Primary initiative, as well as disagreements maybe within the Democratic Party. So a lot of interesting conversation to come. But let's get it warmed up with Andrew himself.
There's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's in. Drew, come roll with the Yang Gang. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up. Yo, there's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's in. Drew, come roll with the Yang Gang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds!
Welcome to the show, Jason. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for entertaining me on your show this morning. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have you here. I discovered you because you're one of the candidates that got listed on ofthepeople.us, and there are a bunch of people that were voting to approve you, and I was like, who is this guy? So I decided to reach out and appreciate you accepting the invitation to talk about yourself.
Well, I very much appreciate all the people who have a vote of confidence in me for Of the People. So thank
Yeah.
you, everyone out there who brought my name to your attention. We are, I think we're fighting a pretty competitive race here up in Washington's second district.
I love it. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself, Jason. Like, who are you, and how did you decide to run?
Well, I'll start with this because I love your background. I was actually I'm a former high school math teacher. I taught high school math, did AP Calculus, AP Statistics, Pre-Calculus, and Trig,
Mm.
and all of that stuff for 18 years. I'm working in insurance now. I took a dip out of education. Which has really worked. I mean, I miss it. I love teaching immensely, but it has given me, the job that I have has given me a lot of flexibility to be with my kids my daughter just graduated high school last year and is doing her first year in college at Western Washington University in Bellingham. My son is an athlete in high school, and the job that I have now, which is just an insurance job, not health insurance, by the way, just property and liability insurance job, gives me a lot of flexibility to do a lot of things with my kids and run a congressional campaign, which I could not do if I was locked into a high school classroom 5 days a week. Yeah, but I have a background as a high school math teacher, union activist. I was elected to my local union for a number of years, and took part in a lot of activities surrounding education down at the state legislature. I've testified in front of the state education committee on standardized testing issues. And then prior to that, I was student at the University of Washington back in the early 90s, and got my start in sort of activism protesting the very first Iraq war in 1990 with the conflict between Iraq and Kuwait, and did some time camping out on the steps of the federal building in Seattle, and meeting with police as they were trying to get us cleared out of the area. So that was fun. I was sophomore in college at the time, but I've continued anti-war activism for 30 years. And then more recently, since my mother was impacted by our terrible healthcare system, I've gotten into healthcare activism also, and I'm a board member of Whole Washington, which is the volunteer-led group that is trying to get single-payer healthcare established here in Washington State, in the absence of a federal bill, because we all certainly believe that a federal bill would be the best way to go. But if we can get a state single payer bill passed here in Washington, like they were trying to do in California with CalCare, and like the New York was trying to do, we believe that would be a step to pushing the federal government towards a federal Medicare for all bill. So I've got my fingers in a lot of things. And my campaign, I've got a lot of policy positions on my for my campaign that I would love to dig deeper into.
Yeah. Well, you got a lot on your mind, and thank you for
Always.
putting it out there and deciding to run. Was that I mean, that's a pretty big decision to run for Congress. You're going to have to not only carve out time but raise a lot of money. Had you thought about other offices
Sure.
before you decide to go for the congressional seat?
Yeah. I mean, I ran for local city council here, but even though I'm in a blue state, I mean, Washington State is overall a blue state. It's actually got some deeply, deeply red areas. The blue states are in the urban areas. I
Hmm.
live in a smaller town, actually a very fast growing town. We're one of the fastest growing areas in the country. So we're seeing with our proximity to Seattle, about 40 miles north of Seattle, we're seeing our land values just go crazy through the roof here. A lot of people moving into the area. But I've been here I've been in this area for like 20 years. And I did run for my local city council, but as my town is very red, and I did pretty well my first run around. That was 2017, but still came in third place. And then, I'm really more focused on national issues. I think local politics is really important. I've got friends running for school boards, city councils, county councils, mayors in the local area, and all those races are really important. But I am very focused on national issues. I'm very focused on national Medicare for all. I'm very focused on the climate crisis. And I think that we need more voices at the federal level. And one of the reasons that I chose to do this is one I was kind of pushed into it by local people who said, we've got this terrible representative here. He is a Democrat, but he's a very corporate conservative Democrat. I've been his constituent the entire time he's been in office. He got elected the same year that George Bush got elected in 2000. So he's been here for 20 years. Doesn't support the Green New Deal. Very performative on any issues that are helping the working class. Won't support single payer health care, and takes a ton of money from the fossil fuel industry, from the military industrial complex, from the banking industry, from the healthcare industry. And as we have seen recently with Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, I mean, the
Mm.
corruption in Congress is just open. It's brazen. It's blatant right now. They don't even care. They're like, yeah, we're taking a ton of money and we're going to work for our donors here. I mean, that much is obvious. So I have felt for at least 15 years that Rick Larson here in Washington second district was not a good representative for the more left wing of the Democratic Party, the progressive, certainly anyone to the full left of the Democratic Party. Not a good representative. Very much represents business interests and not taking the problems of the working class and the environment seriously at all, and is not going to. So there's a real impetus for change here. We do have some very progressive pockets in this district. I ran in 2020, got almost 35,000 votes on my first time around, raising barely $50,000, and no name recognition to speak of. And one of the things in Washington is and I know you want to talk about this later, because this really
Hmm.
falls in line with what Andrew is pushing with the open primaries. Well, we pretty much have an open primary here in Washington State. We have this jungle primary that you guys
Hmm.
have in California. So whoever files for the office, the top two names, they go forward to the general election. So my goal is to be that other name next to the incumbent and give the people of this district an actual policy choice. Because the guy who's in office right now, he runs on not being a Republican, and okay, so he's not a
Hmm.
Republican, but he's certainly not a progressive, and he is that corporate conservative wing of the Democratic Party that does really minimal help for working people in the environment. So we got within 1% of being on the ballot last time around in 2020, and I think we can do better this time around. I think especially with all of the crises that are surrounding us right now, I think that there's real impetus in the district to say, at least let's have that conversation, which will be avoided if he ends up being on the ballot next to a Republican again.
Yeah, let's take a look at these numbers here. it looks like in 2020, you got 34,537, and then the Republican got 37,104. So had you gotten just a few thousand more,
Yep.
then it would have been Rick Larson versus Jason Call, and
Yep.
that would have facilitated a pretty interesting debate within the Democratic Party about how progressive the district wants to be. And I guess
Yeah.
they, yeah, go
I,
ahead.
I want to note that looking at those numbers right now, if you look at that percentage, 48.5, a lot of people come at me and they say, well, you didn't even come close. And I said, well, historically, this is actually the first primary that Rick Larson has ever gotten under 50%
Mhm.
in primary. He's always beaten 50% in the primary. So, I think right now, like I said, with no name recognition, with almost no fundraising, and just people knowing that there is a progressive challenger out there, we came
Mhm.
that much close. Now we've got name recognition. Now we've got much better fundraising. I think it's going to be competitive.
No, I totally agree. I mean, you could argue that what happened after this one was you had this general election result, right? The Larson
Yep.
versus Haslow. And then in some ways, since it's such a blue district, there wasn't really much of a debate to be had, right? Like, no, they're not going to
No,
vote for the
not at all.
Haslow. So they were like, wow, I guess Rick
No.
Larson's the only option.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
really what it has come down to. For the last 20 years, those have been pretty much the numbers. I mean, this is a district where
Hmm.
the Democrat will beat the Republican 2-1. Like
Right.
there is no danger. Of course, the incumbent constantly messages fear of Trump, and that was one of his big messages out to his email lists and texting and
Hmm.
whatever. Is help me beat the Trump agenda. Well, that's a disingenuous message anyway, because you can't you can't yourself beat the Trump agenda, and I would be fighting the quote unquote Trump agenda just as much. I mean, it's a disingenuous fear-based way to message
Yeah.
against Trump. And he did not acknowledge my campaign because there was no benefit to him for doing so. There was no, like, I went through, so I got endorsed, and I just explained a little bit about the district. There
Hmm.
are 14 local Democratic parties that are intersectional with this congressional district. And so we go around the district and we try and get endorsements from the local parties, right? Well,
Hmm.
I was in endorsement meetings all over Zoom because of COVID, but I
Hmm.
was in endorsement meetings with him, a dozen times over the course of the primary season there. He did not mention my campaign once. In fact, his message also, I mean, every single time was the inevitable Republican that I will be facing in, it was really just
Mm.
dismissive. There was no benefit to him in acknowledging my campaign at all, because he doesn't even want to voice to anybody, hey, I got a challenge from the left. It doesn't benefit him whatsoever, because then people go, oh, okay, well, maybe I can take a comparison between two people who are calling themselves Democrats. He didn't want that at all. He knows I was the person out of that entire primary that he did not want to be up against next in the general, I think. And I think they were sweating bullets, because it was,
Yeah.
with the mail-in ballots, it took a good week of watching the returns before we actually said, okay, we're not going
Hmm.
to win this thing. First night of returns, we were like, oh man, we are in this. We are definitely
Hmm.
in this. And it was 3 or 4 days of like, okay, we're still in it. We're still in it. Those last couple of days, it was like, all right, it's pulling away from us. And we, eventually had to say, yeah, it's not going in our favor. But that was a week of like waiting and going, we could really get this.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting in that the real election happened kind of in the primary and not in
Yeah.
the general, right?
And that,
Because
exactly, and that is actually something that when I have to do my candidate call time, and call
mhm,
people and say, hey, can you give my, a lot of people are saying, well, I don't donate until after the primary, and I really have to explain to them, the primary is the general in this
yeah,
district.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
really what it is. So if I'm, they're like, well, and a lot of things times with the Democratic Party, they're like, well, we want to make sure that we have somebody who can beat the Republican, and they know Rick can beat the Republican. And I'm like, okay, come on now. I would beat the Republican in this district. It's not going to be me against a Republican. I have
Yeah.
enough humility to know I am not going to beat
Yeah.
Rick Larson in the primary. But if I get that second place spot, we can have a real conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, if you're a Democrat and you're really concerned about Republicans in the taking control or whatever, the best thing you could do is have you be number 2, and then you're guaranteed a Democrat.
That's exactly right, and that's what happened in 2018 here in Washington's District 9. We had Adam Smith, who is the chair of the Armed Services Committee and good friends with Rick Larson. He got the Republican bumped out of his race by a progressive Sarah Smith, who was running in the same election cycle that AOC and Rashida and Ilhan Omar were all running in their first cycle as well.
Yeah, totally. So tell me a little bit about what makes you different from Rick Larson. I mean, if somebody's out there thinking, hey, Democrat's a Democrat, tell me a little bit about what you would do
It
differently.
is a long, long list. So, well, I mean, really, let's just talk about our backgrounds. My background is in activism and education. Rick came from a lobbying background. He was a lobbyist for the Washington State Dental Association. They're probably the most powerful lobby in Washington State. And I've actually done a lot of digging into money that our state health committee, because I talked about being on the board of Whole Washington, trying to get
Mhm.
single payer healthcare. So I did some research into the money that our state health committees take, our state House and Senate health committees, and the Washington State Dental Association throws a lot of money at the people on the health committees. But he was a lobbyist for them. Um, we've actually found some. I don't remember the details of it right now, but we have found some anti-consumer legislation that he was lobbying for from back in his lobbying career in the late '90s. But he has been in the pockets of these big industries, the ones that I call the anti-progressive industries: fossil fuel, military industrial complex, health insurance, and so on, for-profit healthcare, his entire career. And one of the things that my campaign has done is I always say this. I said this throughout the last campaign. I have the best opposition research in the country for progressive campaigns.
Mm.
So if you go to my website, callforcongress.com, you'll see a tab on there that is called Rick's Receipts. Well, we have dug into just about every dollar and every vote that he has taken. And if people really want to see what they're getting out of a corporate representative, they can go read those narratives there, and you can just see, like, here's the money that comes in, here's the votes that are made, and in many, many cases, you've got a direct A to B connection. Like, he takes money from TransCanada, and then the next day he tweets out his support of oil pipelines. He's taken money from Enbridge. They are the owners of the Line 3 pipeline, and he is a big pipeline supporter, so he's certainly not going to be oppositional to that, and he's taken their money. All sorts of things like that. So, my campaign, I am for environmental protections. I think the climate crisis is now turning into climate chaos, climate disaster, and it's going to affect people worldwide here. And I don't know that there's anything that we can really do to stop some things that are happening, but we certainly need to eliminate emissions. And we certainly need to get our energy systems transformed to renewable and sustainable energy. And it needs to be done now. So if you compare that to so Rick is on the House Transportation Committee. He's actually the chair of the Aviation Committee. And the House transportation proposal for essentially greening the national transportation grid, it's pathetic. It's absolutely substandard, minimal. But why is that? Because they want the people who are donating a ton of money to them to keep making their industry profits, and that's not going to happen if we green the industry. So we're in opposition We're in opposition on the environment. We're certainly in opposition on healthcare. I support a national Medicare for all system. Rick says he won't support single payer, and he is a big supporter of the military. He's the fourth ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, and he takes a ton of money from Boeing. I know Boeing is a big employer in the district, but they are also a huge military contractor. So he takes a ton of money from Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Honeywell, all of these companies that have a vested interest in seeing the war machine continue. He's taking money from them. So what we have in his voting record is he voted against withdrawal from Afghanistan 6 times. He's voted against any cuts to the military budget. Even the mildest 0.1% proposals of cutting the military budget, he has voted against. He has voted to continue nuclear proliferation. He's voted against environmental studies that might impact the fossil fuel industry. I mean, the list of votes.
This guy's a Democrat?
He's a and that's what I try to say, because I get responses to my emails that are like, well, why would you want to challenge a Democrat? He's a good Democrat. And I tell them, your version of a good Democrat and my version of a good Democrat are completely different. And I want to say this, that I was elected, I was a Bernie guy. I caucused for Bernie in 2016. I worked for Bernie's campaign not as a volunteer, not paid, but I worked for Bernie's campaign locally in 2020. And coming out of 2016, where Bernie in this state, in Washington State, won our caucus 73%. We absolutely trounced Hillary Clinton in the caucus here. And part of the reason was myself and a number of other activists knew how the caucus system worked. And we basically went around the state and we trained people how to do the local caucuses. And we got all the people who were really wanting substantial change to show up to those caucuses. And we won big. I mean, Bernie won like 90% in some counties here. So coming out of that, a lot of my activist friends and myself, we got ourselves elected to local Democratic Party office. And I was elected to the Washington State Democrats Central Committee, where in 2018, I actually ran for party chair. And I had a hand in rewriting the state Democrats platform to include support for Medicare for all and single payer, to reject money from the private healthcare industries and the fossil fuel industries, and we added a whole housing justice platform. So the progressives who got elected in 2016, and we were about a third of the state committee, not enough to have any real control, but we actually wanted to get in there and do some good policy work. We rewrote the state party platform to be really, truly progressive. And so when people say here, Rick Larson's a good Democrat, I can hold up that platform and say, he doesn't believe this, and this, and it's in his voting record. And this is what our state committee said we believe. So I don't know how you're judging good Democrat, but for me, he's not a good Democrat. And for a long time hasn't been. I've been oppositional to him since at least 2005 when he voted for the Banking Reform Act. And that was a giveaway to the banking industry. So when we look at the student loan crisis, what we see is the amount of student loans that were out that went from 2005 to 2006 when the banking reform crisis was in, it jumped like 23% because a lot of people who were starting to default on their student loans could no longer write it off in bankruptcy, and so that loan debt just accumulated, and it was right there directly tied to that 2005 act. One of the things people need to know about Rick Larson is he is arrogant, and he does not want to talk. He does not want to be challenged in public. And so my real opposition to him, sort of on a personal level, came from 2005 when I was in a big forum. We were in an open air baseball stadium forum, hundreds of people there, and I got the mic and I asked him, why did you vote for this act, this banking reform act that hurts the working class and it hurts students? And he didn't want to talk about it. He basically said that the people who wrote that bill know more than I do, and that has been his position, over and over and over again. That the people in Washington who are writing this policy, they know more than you, and you're just going to have to shut up and deal with it. So that doesn't gel with me at all. He doesn't engage with it with his constituents unless they're fawning over him and basically loving him for whatever reason. He doesn't want to engage on anything that might be contentious at all.
What's the what's the sort of debate opportunity look like between now and the open and the primary?
I will be honest with you.
Yeah.
He is not going to debate me pre-primary. He is going It does not benefit him to do that unless I can get some local parties to and that may happen. Because I have some party chairs locally who do support me and do not like Rick. Um, but the party chairs supporting me versus like the constituents of that local party supporting me, and sometimes they're different things. Um, so there may be an opportunity to debate. Whether he shows up for it or not would remain to be seen. It's simply of no benefit to his campaign whatsoever to debate me because I got his number on every single policy issue, and he knows it.
That's interesting. Like, wouldn't it, if you ignore the names like Rick, Jason, whoever, just wouldn't it be in the interest of the Democratic Party to support or even require that there be a few forums where there can be these discussions pre-primary? Otherwise, how
You
are party members supposed to pick?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the corruption within the Democratic Party.
Mm,
So, at the party level, like I said, I ran for party chair as a member of the Washington State Democrats Central Committee. I ran for party chair, and I railed about corporate money. I mean, that's really the distinction: is do you take corporate money or do you reject corporate money and actually serve quote unquote the people, right? What are the needs of the people? So there's obviously a difference in us as candidates, but the state party Rick Larson's a big fundraiser for the party, right? And so are a lot of these other Democrats who are being challenged right now. Derek Kilmer being challenged in Washington's 6th district by Rebecca Parson. Adam Smith being challenged again by Stephanie Gallardo. But these politicians are big fundraisers, and progressive challengers like myself, we are highly critical of how the Democratic Party operates with big money at the highest levels. So they do not like these challenges. You're like the
mm,
state party does not like at the executive level. And I'm not even talking about the state committee level. I'm talking about the executive level, the chair and the executive board. They know how the party is funded, and the party is funded by corporate money locally. And there's a lot of people, consultants and whatnot, who get their salaries paid for not by people giving money to the Democratic Party, but by corporations giving money to the Democratic Party, and by these candidates who are big fundraisers turning around and giving money to the state party. So we are not just challenging this one representative. We are challenging the entire system of Democratic Party politics that is entrenched in corporate money. So going back to, wouldn't the Democratic Party want an honest debate? No, they don't want an honest debate. They want to keep their corporate candidates in office.
mm. That's so sad. Because
It's gross.
then the people don't really get much of a choice, right? Like, if you
No, they don't.
it's like
And
either
so
you vote for this crazy Trump person or like this kind of watered down. I mean, I don't want to be dismissive of the other candidate, but whether you like that person or not, like, why would you ever argue against having more options and letting people kind of make their case?
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
just weird.
Well, a lot of people in the local parties called my run last year a vanity campaign. Well, we came out hitting hard, and like you showed, we got almost
Mm-hmm.
35,000 votes.
Yeah.
That's not a vanity campaign. 35,000 votes is a serious effort. And we did the best we could. And if we'd had more campaign money, maybe we could have gotten those extra 3,000 votes. But we are a legitimate challenge to the authority of the corporate establishment, and they can't stand it. They really do not like progressive challengers at all.
Yeah, I
In fact,
mean,
let me let me
go ahead.
just add one more, because we're in the middle of redistricting, and I don't know how redistricting is if you've been paid attention to the redistricting that's going on in your local area, but we have two Democrats and two Republicans from our state legislature proposing redistricting maps. Now, California, you guys got like 53 districts, 55 districts. So you
Yeah.
guys got a ton of districts. We only have 10 districts. So
Mhm.
our redistricting is a little bit easier. But the Democrats are clearly trying to make Washington's second district more conservative. Like if you look at the proposed four maps side by
Mm.
side, both of the Democratic proposals make this district substantially more conservative. In fact, once those maps came out, Rick Larson almost immediately tweeted out, "Oh, looks like Washington's second district is going to be more conservative, still Democratic, but we're going to be about 5 or 6 points down from that we were D plus 11, so now we're
Mhm.
D plus 5." Well, he's loving that because
Mm.
he's going to look, if it gets to the point where he feels he has to acknowledge my campaign, what he's going to say is, don't vote for that guy because that guy's not going to be able to beat a Republican now, especially since our district is more conservative. It still does not change the dynamic at all that we're a jungle primary, and the best option for all Democrats is to have two Democrats on the general election ballot. But that's how they're going to message it.
Yeah. If all you care about is not having a Republican represent the second district of Washington state, you should actually try and get Jason Call as the number 2 guy, because you lock in the whole district blue.
Right?
Yeah.
but then,
But
but
yeah,
then but then he would really stand to lose the seat because people in this district are progressives.
well,
That's
then
we've
there
got
you go.
we've got really good progressive areas in this district. So
Let the
we'll see
people
what happens.
decide then. Well, if they if they vote
Exactly.
for Jason Call, that's their decision.
Yep.
But like let's have a real competition. I don't know. It's sad. I
I
mean, what do
believe
you've got Andrew Yang running around talking about, hey, um, the primary system is a big part of the problem. He's also a fan of not only open primaries but ranked choice voting.
yeah,
And I'm a big supporter in general of just more competition. Um, honestly, I think a lot of people would probably consider me a bit of a moderate Democrat. So I might actually, if I were in that district, I don't know if who I would vote for, but I know that I would want a really thorough vetting of all options and
sure.
let the best candidate win, kind of thing. And the
Yeah,
way it works now, it sounds like, well, you get the Democrat with the most votes, and then you get a Republican who has no shot, and those are the
absolutely no
options.
shot at all. Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So tell me a little bit about how do you think we can get these because I think the Republican Party is the same, that they pick who they want to be their nominee well before the primary happens,
I
and
believe so.
they don't go out of their way to encourage, more competition there. So both parties, they've been working similarly for a while. How do you think, like, we can improve the situation so it is more, democratic with the lowercase d, because it doesn't feel that way now.
Well, there are two things, and you've mentioned one of them, and one of them is ranked choice voting or star voting. I don't know if you've
Mm-hmm.
looked into the
Yeah.
star voting system, but certainly either of them would be substantially preferable to the top two right now. It doesn't affect California and Washington so much because we already do
Right.
have that open primary and jungle primary. But in other states where your top Republican goes against the top Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
that's just basically a rigged system for big money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So yeah, and we have you're probably aware of the organization Fair Vote. Fair Vote has a pretty strong presence here in Washington,
Hmm.
and we actually had a ranked choice voting bill in the state legislature. It was supported by 26 Democrats. We had
Mm.
26 out of, I'm trying to think of, it was almost the entire. Well, no, I shouldn't say that because there's two reps for. Anyway, it had a lot of backing, actually made it through the House and Senate, and then didn't get a final vote on the House floor, and I'm not sure why it didn't. But it just didn't make it through whatever the final hurdle was, and hopefully they will bring it back. But getting state legislatures behind ranked choice voting or star voting has got to be part of the equation. And then the other thing is we've got to have a campaign finance reform bill. And this is one of the things that's actually frustrated me about the more progressive Democrats right now, is that nobody is putting up a campaign finance reform bill and nobody is talking about the corruption of corporate money. And I hope they will throughout the course of this next year. Like I said, it's openly clear at this point how impactful corporate money is on our political system. And I really think it's important for progressives to put a campaign finance reform bill out there that limits campaign financing, or just eliminates corporate PAC money. I'm not sure how you would do it, but right now, and then we've got Citizens United, which is we've got to have. I'm supportive of move to amend. Washington in 2016, we passed I-735, which was an initiative, pro move to amend, where we were encouraging our state reps to vote against citizens to vote to overturn by constitutional amendment the Citizens United. But that's a really long road, and I'm not sure what to do about that. So the other thing that President Biden could do, if he was really serious about getting rid of Citizens United, is he could just expand the Supreme Court, and he has the power to do that. Expand the Supreme Court, get Manchin and Sinema on board with doing that, getting some more Democratic leaning justices in there, and then just overturning it. That's actually something that is not unprecedented in our history. There's nothing in the Constitution that says we have to have 9 Supreme Court justices. I believe we've had as many as 15 in the past. So there are some avenues there, but it seems like the corporate wing of the Democratic Party is not interested in taking those avenues. And like I said, the progressive wing really needs to start yelling louder about it.
One of the things when Yang was running for president that I thought was undercovered by the media was his proposal of democracy dollars, where every citizen got $100 and they could donate it to whatever campaign they supported, and it would instantly kind of level the playing field a little more. Because in your case, where you had the 34,000 votes, I mean, if they each gave you their 100 democracy dollars, that you would have had $3 million, and you probably
Yeah,
would have been able to make your case a lot stronger. Whereas your corporate opponents, they might have gotten a little bit more money, but they were already rolling in millions of dollars, so it would
yeah,
really level
absolutely.
things.
We really do need public financing of campaigns, and they actually did democracy vouchers like that in Seattle
Mm,
a couple of years ago.
yeah.
So I think they've got. I'm not sure what the value of it is. I maybe it's $10, maybe it's $25, but yeah, I mean they gave people money to donate to campaigns. I'll have to look into how that worked out.
Yeah, I mean, Boeing and the health sort of industry, and there's all kinds of and energy industry, like they can write these checks easily.
Hmm.
But then the candidates who are resonating with a lot of individuals, working class folks who may not have a lot of money to throw around, their voice is basically kind of drowned out. So
Yep.
um,
Yep.
hopefully we can see some more reform there. I'm going to take some questions from the audience for you, Jason.
Let's do it.
Before I do that, let me just thank some of the supporters of this channel and give a few shout outs, and we'll get on to questions from the audience. And then we're also going to do some national issues that, like, if you were in Congress, what would your kind of perspective be on some of these kind of hot topics going on? So let's get into the thank yous first. We've got at the senior VP level for Nerds for Humanity, Soldier One. Thank you, Soldier. And then at the VP level, we have Kristen Slevin, Laura Lane, and Bike Bike. And then at the hardcore level, we have Mike, Gene, David, DK, Jackalego, Kirsch, Mr. History, Byron, Mona, Susan, Yang, Tony, Robert, Dean, Stat Nerd, Galessa, J Perrin, AH, J Brian, Vivian, Dana, Flavio, Yoda, Jason, and Parth. And then at the verified level, I'm just going to scroll past them. So thank you to all our verified nerds as well. Appreciate you guys helping keeping this channel going. Couldn't do it without you, and helps us facilitate conversations like this, as well as support the hosting fees and the podcast and all that good stuff. Now, Jason, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the news right now. And I'm just going to pull up my New York Times politics section. And this is what's going on as of this morning. There's the Manchin debate, the sort of social safety net bill, $3.5 trillion to $2 trillion. And then maybe the other big story is the Jan 6 panel. Let's start with this whole debate about the social safety net bill. And this is one that's kind of interesting because it's mainly a debate within the Democratic Party. And you've got a couple of we'll call them moderate Democrats, and then you've got the progressives, and they're not agreeing. There's I guess a risk that nothing gets done, which obviously would be not helpful. On the other side of the coin, people could say, "Hey, this is an opportunity to make a historic leap, in terms of reform." What's your take?
Well, my take right off the bat is that Manchin and some of these other right-wing Democrats, or corporate extremists, I call them, they're crooked as hell. Manchin is a coal baron. He is heavily invested in the fossil fuel industry, and I think a lot of this goes to not just the social safety net, but the fact that Biden's bill does, and I have to say that Biden's bill is it's substandard in terms of what we need to do to address climate change, but it is something. And the same thing with the social safety net. It is substandard. We have 100 million people in this country who don't have access to affordable health care. They can't go see a doctor when they need to. They come out of medical experiences deeply in bankruptcy for the last 15, 20 years has been the number one cause of bankruptcy has been due to medical debt. So, we look around the world and we see other countries who have healthcare systems that substantially better take care of their citizenry. And we wonder why we can't get something like that in this country, in the wealthiest nation in the world, especially when we look at, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk playing, space cowboy. So it's a real slap in the face. Manchin, I am not quote unquote a supporter of the Build Back Better bill in terms that it, just in terms of it just doesn't go far enough. It's not enough spending. As you probably know, Bernie Sanders put $6 trillion on the table. My opinion on that kind of spending is that if we have a population that is well educated, that has secure and stable housing, that has health care that they can afford and is accessible, and for me, free at the point of service should be the standard. We would have actually a far more productive economy. So what we see here, the fight is really not over social safety net so much as it is who is going to reap the profits of whatever the government spending is. And these representatives that are captured by the corporate sector, I think it's real evident that there's class warfare going on. It's something that people don't want to talk about a lot, but I think we've got just evident in our Congress right now class warfare. And I want to be careful also about labeling people progressives, because in my opinion, there are maybe a dozen progressives in Congress, right? When we talk about the Progressive Caucus, not all of those people are progressives, not in in my standard anyway. So people like the newly elected Cory Bush, Jamal Bowman, and so on, those are actual real progressives. So Nancy Pelosi may support Biden's agenda here, but it's not a progressive agenda. So I think, yeah, we've got a real fight within the Democratic Party to determine. Really, it comes down to, what does the Democratic Party stand for? Are you going to stand for corporate interests? Are you going to stand for supporting, the working class the way that you always claim to? So that's really the fight right there.
So let's just kind of scroll through what's currently in the Build Back Better Act that is being debated and potentially going to be cut down. There's 2 years of free community college, universal pre-K, expansion of Medicare, child tax credit, reduction in prescription drugs, paid family and medical leave, climate change, and then a bunch of other stuff, including SBA and Justice Department award competitive contracts to reduce community violence. Not, I know it's been positioned by some of the Trump folks as a socialist wish list, but
Socialist, it's not even. I
but it's
wish
like
we had a
healthcare and
socialist bill in front
education
of us.
and climate.
No.
Yeah.
Well, my position is that state colleges should be tuition and fee free. If you are somebody who wants to go to college, and you come out of high school and you're qualified, academically to do some work, I say it benefits you as an individual to not come out of that experience with a ton of loan debt, but it also benefits the general economy to not have people saddled with a ton of student debt. And plus, they're getting the skills in college that we would say, hey, we want those out in the workforce. So I definitely think that we need to have 4 years, and I would even say up through PhD work. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Education is something that we should not put a price tag on in this country. And I'd say the same thing for vocational training. You come out of high school, you get to 10th or 11th grade, and you want to learn a particular trade, and that's where your skills and your interests are. I say we pay for that also. I don't want to separate like a 4-year school from vocational and trade schools. Education is a benefit to the general society, and it should be paid for by the general society. Same thing with healthcare. They're talking about Medicare expansion. Okay, so what, they're going to drop the age from 65 to 55. Okay, that barely makes a dent in the needs of our general population. So, you've got our young people right now who can't get a job. Maybe they're not on their parents' insurance because their parents don't have health insurance either. What are we doing for those people at all? I have been on the ACA. I had to, transitioning out of education and into the new job that I have, I had to spend a few months on the ACA. I got a couple of kids I got to take care of. That was just an unaffordable for somebody who is low income, and I'm working class. For somebody who is lower income, the premiums are unaffordable. And then it's not just the premiums are unaffordable, like what you have to pay on the back end with many of those programs. You're like, okay, I can't afford to. I'm really fortunate that I have good employer-based health insurance right now, because if I would be really struggling with health insurance issues if I was still on the ACA. So, again, national improved Medicare for all. I think healthcare services should be free for everybody, and we certainly have the tax base to pay for it. If your issue is how do we pay for it with taxes? But for those of you who understand modern monetary theory, and I don't know if that's something that anybody would want to get into, the federal government can pay for anything it wants to pay for. I mean, nobody ever comes back at a defense budget, defense spending bill and says, how are you going to pay for it? They're just like, yeah, we're going to throw money at the military. So that is another thing that we need to make sure that we're comparing, is that the defense budget is actually over 10 years, twice. Right? It's twice what the Build Back Better bill is. And people don't seem to talk about, how come you're saying we can't afford to spend on supporting Americans who are struggling right now through a pandemic, but you're still willing to spend twice as much money on the military. And, we already spend 10 times more than the nearest nation on military. So it's really comes down to a matter of priorities.
Jason, it's been fantastic having you on the show, and I really hope that folks listening or watching this on replay consider learning more about your campaign and supporting it, because I think the district deserves options, and the incumbent plus some Republican that has no chance of winning is not really an option. And so it'll be really great to follow you, and it seems like you were only a few thousand votes away from getting on the main stage, and then the other candidate would have been forced to debate you, and that would have
Yep.
been really interesting.
Yep.
And then people would have had more
I'm
choice.
ready for it. If we get to that point, I'm definitely ready for it.
Tell us a little bit about what people can do who are thinking, "Hey, I like this Jason Cole guy." Like, how can they be helpful to you?
Well, I mean, money is always the number one issue for the campaign. I have uh, campaign services that I need to pay for, and we need to get literature printed and all of that kind of stuff. So call for Congress, and it's FOR, not the number four, CALLFOR, Congress.com is my website. There is a donate link there. We've got a wonderful web store. I'm going to plug my merchandise right now. I just got this mug in the mail yesterday, all union made, and t-shirts. So anybody who wants to buy merchandise, we've got some really high quality union merchandise on there. But $5, $10, $27, whatever it might be, if you want to kick in to help the campaign, follow my campaign. If you want to know more about my policy positions, I'm open, vocal, bold about the things that I stand for. I am also Call for Congress, just like that, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook.
Excellent. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please like and share it so more people can learn about Jason. And really appreciate you spending a Saturday morning with me, Jason. And hopefully you'll make some history.
I appreciate it very much, Tom. I very much enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Right on. With that, we're going to say goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.